Hello, everybody. Welcome to Top Line. It's a very special day today. We've done so much to prepare for this episode. We've got 14 different guest co-hosts. We've got confetti falling from the ceilings. We've got parade. It's the 100th episode of the Top Line podcast.
Do you know what we don't have, though, Sam, which I really miss? Your little Top Line hotline ditties. We haven't had one of those in forever.
I got my first real top line in my mother's face.
Yeah, we miss that. We miss that.
That's inappropriate. Who knows anyway.
The ditty itself wasn't. I mean, maybe your lyrics were. Ditties themselves weren't inappropriate. They were on point.
Welcome to Top Line, the podcast for the best founders, operators, and investors in B2B tech. Every week, AJ Bruno, Asad Zaman, and me, Sam Jacobs, will break down what's important for you to know to be the most well-informed professionals in the market.
This episode of Top Line is sponsored by Staircase AI by Gainsight. Your next expansion deal or churn risk, it's already in your customer data. You're just not seeing it. Staircase AI analyzes every conversation, spots hidden risks, and automates expansion plays so GTM teams can win more renewals, drive pipeline, and stop buyer fighting. Forecast with 95% accuracy, eliminate guesswork, and turn customer insights into revenue. Because the best way to grow is to keep the customers you've already won. Learn more at gainsight.com/staircase. That's Gainsight, SIGHT.com/staircase. Now back to the show.
100 episodes.
Yes. Sam Jacobs, AJ Bruno, Asad Zaman. 100 episodes. Oof. How do you feel? Asad, it feels like you're ruminating.
It's intense. 100 episodes. There are a few things. It's wild. That's 150 hours of recording, probably another 100-ish hours of preparation and other work on it. It's wild. It's wild to do something for so long, so consistently. We've never missed a week, other than I think 1 week every December. So it feels great to have seen something through this far, and for this to still be 100 of hopefully a few thousand episodes.
Few thousand?
Few thousand.
You're going to be 85 years old still doing these?
This is a life's work kind of guy. He doesn't do anything by half measure.
I thought this was it. I was done after 100.
I have 33 years in my career to go, and so we have some time.
33 years? Do you have a countdown? You're one of those guys that I feel like has a Gmail countdown, it's your wallpaper.
I have it in my head. So I'm 37. I plan on working till I'm 70, so 33 years to go.
Oh, man, you're only 30. Okay. I thought you were a lot younger than I am. But you're not that much younger. You're only 3 years younger.
I'm older than both of you, and
you don't have to say you're at the age where you can't. You don't have to say your
50. Age. I'm going to be 50. In fact, I'm going to die soon.
Sam doesn't have thousands of days to do this podcast. He has hundreds of days left.
Yeah, I have 12 days.
I was watching the Brian Johnson documentary. And it is wild, some of the stuff that they now have figured out how to elongate people's lives. So maybe we'll be at this at 120
What was
years.
one takeaway?
Yeah, exactly.
Sleep.
I think the premise of why he's doing this was really interesting. He was a burnt-out entrepreneur who was highly depressed. He was suicidal at that point. And his whole premise is that if you listen to your organs, it tells you how to live. And that if you do those things, it quiets the brain down. It calms you down. It takes away the depression. It takes you away from living in your head to living through your body. And that was the core premise. It was actually a mental health type of thing. And I just didn't know that. I thought that was really interesting.
Okay. What does that mean, listen to your organs?
It means that each organ is different in terms of what it needs and how it functions. And so if you look at your heart will tell you what to eat for. Of course not.
Yeah, but this is just like blood sample. What do you mean? So I like listening. Is he like really listening to his organs, or just like to the blood?
Oh, like doing tests in the organs,
Yeah.
like you should run more and you should sleep. Like it tells you kind of a protocol on how to live.
Yeah.
I don't want this. I don't want the Brian Johnson way. I want the pill. I want the, hey, we inject stem cells into your prefrontal cortex and it reverses the aging process by 40 years. That's what
I'm so
want.
excited for that.
Is it? I mean, I hear this. You guys feel like this is coming?
I mean, I think something transformational is coming. The way I've always understood it or read about it is that aging is not divine. It is a mechanic, like it's a biological process.
Yeah.
And to the extent that it's a biological process, it can be reverse engineered. They can figure out why cells degrade and they can give you things to reverse that theoretically. And so
they figured it out in mice, actually. They've extended lives of mice.
So like the way when I talk about it with people, it's the point of life expectancy isn't that it goes from like 73 to 75 to 82. It's like one day everybody will have, or rich people will have the opportunity to live to like 150. And then the rest of us will get it like a decade later. But it's going to be a step function. And then there's probably going to be a point. The next big thing will be, reconstructing some version of your brain. Or your body as well, digitally, or some kind of cybernetic organism that will enable you to live forever. How long would you live if you could live in good health, AJ, but there was a reasonable chance that something really cool was possible in the afterlife? How long would you
live? To the 1 millionth episode of Top Line. That would be it.
That's a great answer. And with that, enough screwing around. Asad, what are we talking about on our 100th episode?
I think it's just poetic in a strange way that we started doing Top Line when Silicon Valley Bank was falling apart, and it felt for a few days that the ecosystem was going to be on fire. And so volatility was the state of conditions at that point. And 2 years later, 100 episodes in, the S&P was down 2.7% yesterday. Recession risk is at the highest it's been at over the last couple of years. We came into 2025 thinking it'll be a good year. Trump will be good for the markets. It'll be a year where growth is possible. And now it just might be the worst economic environment we've been in over the last couple of years. And so I think its age is strange and poetic. And I'm curious, since volatility has been the name of the game for the last couple of years, especially how it wasn't for such a long period of time between 2008 and let's say 2022, it was a relatively stable upswing type of market. And now the steady state has been volatility. Sam, I'm curious, what have you learned about volatility and managing it and working through it over these last 2 years of dealing with it?
I've learned that it's mainly a mental game. That doesn't mean you don't have to be responsive. I've learned sort of two things. One of them is that your mental health is, to the point of the conversation about Brian Johnson, like our collective mental health, but particularly as CEOs and founders, I think we've all figured out that us being of sound mind and body is a critical prerequisite to leading our organizations through this level of volatility. And for better, but obviously much, much more for better and leastly for worse. All of this is saying life is good these days for me. If you can design your life in a very intentional way where the volatility isn't part of your daily brain regimen, to the point of me deleting X from my phone, that doesn't mean I don't go on WSJ, Wall Street Journal, and New York Times and see that Trump now wants 50% tariffs on Canada, which seems great.
Asad, give us 50% of your assets right now. You owe Sam and me.
Well, wasn't bad enough. He's like, guys,
mostly you just owe me because I am in the United States right now. So give me 50% of your assets right now.
We'll talk about that, but first things first is design your. We've also all been through so much, all three of us, and I think we've learned how to manage this in a better way. But again, it starts with mental and physical health. And then the second thing I would say is, but you do have to be responsive. And Pavilion's greatest moments have come in times of volatility spikes. When the SVB crisis happened, that's when we launched Topline. And that's also when we created that sort of free community for founders and CEOs so people could share what was happening. When the tech recession really got going, we started OTB, the On the Bench program, as a career services program for people transitioning between roles. And I think that's the second thing I've learned is very literally, the investing advice people give you is be fearful when others are greedy and greedy when others are fearful. Now is probably a great time to invest. But beyond that, there are moments when everybody's getting punched in the face that you can lead. And the trick is to move away from, your animal instinct and your reptile brain and your fight or flight instinct and think about how is this an opportunity to lead through these circumstances? Because even in times of economic duress, companies grow, great decisions are made. So you have to be flexible and adaptable. And you also have to be getting good sleep, hanging out with loved ones, leading a good life. Those are the things I've learned. AJ, what have you learned?
Some things change and some things don't change at all. I miss Asad's beard. I went back and he had a great beard. Asad, when was the last time you had that beard?
It's been now probably a year.
A year.
My hair is longer. I'm less tanned. I have no beard.
Yeah.
I've changed
skin, though.
What's that, Sam?
I think Asad's got good skin. At least
He's got great skin.
Yeah.
I went back and watched clips from the first episode. Our mics have changed. Our cameras have changed a little bit. But it's a lot of the same things that we continue to discuss. It was actually kind of funny, Sam, hearing you talk about AI. And you said it. You prognosticated. You forecasted that you were that AI was going to fundamentally change the world. You said a year, and you said we were going to hire less people, and you said that growth is just going to look differently. And I thought that was the one thing that really stood out because this was in March of 2023. ChatGPT was less than 6 months old. We didn't really know how to use it, and we just had this idea around it. That was one area, and then the three of us talked a lot about what SVB meant in terms of a recession. But what the three of us did is said we can only control what we can control, and we're going to focus on our companies and we're going to focus on our mental health. Yesterday, it was 65 degrees here in Philadelphia. I went for a 4-mile run on the trail for the first time in 6 months. And my goodness, did like a whole veil just open up. It was just like a light just opened up. So I 100% agree on the mental health piece of it. And all three of our companies have grown over the last 3 years in lots of different ways. We've grown as leaders, as entrepreneurs, as founders, as making sure our people feel safe and secure in the environment they're in. And that's ever changing. And so this idea of volatility, Asad, volatility, life's never going to get easier. Like 20% tariffs, 50% tariffs, it just is what it is. And we just kind of have to take each day as it comes at us and control what we can control.
It's interesting how it's become the steady state and how that steady state is where I think we had some massive realizations about how to deploy ourselves in the most effective way. I feel similarly around some of the realizations over the last couple of years around how to run this marathon effectively. And it kind of comes down to simple things like you got to sleep well and exercise and eat well and, have some joy and love in your life so that you can tackle these problems with the right mindset. And it's just really interesting how the good times don't teach you that as much as the choppy waters do. And that's something I've been reflecting on. The thing I'm wondering a lot right now is that if volatility is this new steady state, are operators and founders out there, have they developed, let's say, the endurance for it? And now we can just run at this pace in these environments for a very long time? Or are we getting hit with a recession at a point where these people are exhausted and tired and they're just been run down from the last couple of years? Because it's been hard. Like, it has been a hard period. Sam, what are your thoughts on that? What are your feelings about?
I think there's probably a couple different kinds of people. I would certainly say that I have heard from other investors that there are more CEOs, and maybe I heard it from AJ. Maybe it was on Topline. Who knows? But I've personally heard more CEOs bowing out recently than was regularly heard of a couple of years ago. So I think there's a one class of CEO. Honestly, as I'm thinking about it and thinking back and reflecting on some of the entrepreneurs I know personally and that we know, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and that we speak to fairly regularly. Putting myself in the shoes of people that are running unprofitable businesses that are desperate for capital all the time. That's not. It's
exhausting.
It's exhausting. It's exhausting, and thinking about where the money's going to come from, and are you going to have to fire more people, and at what point do you just give up on it, and then you think I can't give up. I've put too much of myself into this. I've got to find a way. There's got to be a way. And I know people that have been. I know people that have been going to conferences and trade shows and staying at Motel 6, and flying in the back of the plane. This is not like I sound so bougie but honestly, I think about like 10-hour flights, back of the plane, staying at a crappy motel, just trying to run your game, trying to play your game. Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that are really, really, really tired.
There's a founder that I know for the last 5 years, every single conversation has revolved around fundraising.
Yep.
Like I am exhausted. I talk to him like once every 4 or 5 months, and every single time it's like, well, we're $200K committed of a $2 million raise now. And like, it just,
hey, we're going to run out of cash by April. We're going to run out of cash by June. Yeah. We just got a bridge, but the bridge, half of it pays back the guy that bridged the other guy that bridged.
And now we have warrants, and now we have 2X participating, and now we have an IRR tied to it, and here's all these terms to it. And it does beg the question, at what point do these folks throw in the towel? But the reality is, all three of us have gone through so many different life changes in the last 102 weeks. And I can only speak for myself, but like I have had moments in time that you both know where I'm like, I don't know if I want to do this. I've already had an exit. I don't need to be the CEO of this company anymore. And I've gone through that exercise and gone through, this is 2 years ago, so I'm open talking about it, even a recruitment of that role. What would that look like if I wasn't running a quota path and done that exercise? I've gone through health problems.
We're keeping that under wraps. We're recording Topline, and there were candidates flowing through your pipeline that were going to be CEO quota path.
Yeah. I kept just shooting every time.
I remember saying, like, should I bow out of Topline right now? I'm not going to be a CEO. What's going to happen? But, and I went through health challenges. It's usually health is a catalyst. I've gone through family health challenges, still ongoing. So if you're out there and you're thinking about some of these things, this is not alone. You're not alone. This is every single day. This is what we talk about. So some things change. Some things don't change at all.
I think.
Go ahead, Asad.
One of the things that is interesting about, I think, the job of a CEO, but also any senior exec, I think, shares this. But I haven't been in those seats, so I can't speak completely clearly about it. But I think this is true for most execs, which is your job is not to focus on what's going well all the time. You're kind of the chief problem solver in the business. So on any given day, the way you can have maximum impact on a day-to-day basis is what's the biggest issue, and then you go and kind of jump into it. So AJ is a perfect example of, he's spoken about a lot recently, how he's jumped in on customer success. Obviously, to him, that was the most high leverage deployment of his time, and was probably the place that is going to be most mentally and physically exhausting to be, but that's the job. And I think one of the things I've noticed is there are people that are exhausted, but there are others who I think have developed this fundamental understanding of what the job really is, or what a big part of the job this thing is. And by doing it so much over the last couple of years, the number of problems to solve are higher in a volatile environment than not for any type of business. You do develop some endurance to it. I think even the three of us, I think, are far better at dealing with volatility mentally and emotionally than we were at the start of this period. At least for me, that holds really true. So that's one. But it is true as well that there are a lot of people that are very mentally and physically exhausted right now. And I do worry for them. I worry that if this recession comes through, because we came into the year with such high expectations of what this year was going to be, 2025 growth was back on the table, 2026, the IPO market would be booming. We felt it too. And now it's like, it's probably going to be really rough, guys. I do think it's going to lead to some people having to step away, others not being able to navigate these periods well enough. And I worry for that. I don't know what the solution is, but I do think there'll be a lot of people in that bucket. What do you think, Sam? What does one do about that?
I don't know what to do.
Is that where community comes in? Like, is that one of the ways you think about community, is helping all of us develop perspective and skills and endurance for these type of things?
100%. And it's interesting because one of my goals for this year was to continue to re-inject some passion, some heart into what Pavilion is, because I felt like we spent the last couple of years spending a lot of time talking about the what, but not talking about the why when it comes to my business. So one of the things I did is we send out a weekly newsletter. And when I look at the newsletter a couple months ago, it was all just ads, Gemini summarized our weekly newsletter on the side, and it was really funny because it was like, in this newsletter, Pavilion asks you to buy more things from Pavilion.
That's so good.
That's pretty much it. And so I started writing Sam's Corner. I started writing like the header, and I don't spend a ton of time on it, but I'm really to the point, Asad, trying to like lean in. I used to write, emails in a Sunday newsletter during COVID. And that's another thing I've been thinking about a lot, that sometimes we conflate ZERP and COVID, and they're not really, they were related. Like they happened at similar times, but they were different things. And, my point is that during COVID, I was sitting alone in my apartment in the West Village. I was the only person on my floor because I was separated from my partner at the time. And it was 2 Shih Tzus, and Walter had his orange bed. And, I'd spend a lot of time because Oscar would get in the bed sometimes, but it's Walter's bed. So please, Oscar, please. And I was on a MacBook Air, and I would be sending a lot of emails to the community. And the point of the emails were like, hey, we're in this together. You're not alone. This is a message to let you know that you're not alone. And I think it had it's a brand investment. I don't know how much it had to do with our growth during COVID, but I know that it felt like it had something to do with our growth. And so my point is, the last couple of weeks, particularly, I've been doing the same thing. I've been trying to send very personal messages, trying to really like capture who am I, where am I? And because I've sensed even before, our president, my president, not your president, Asad, but my president, see me, just intentionally trying to drive our economy, not even off a cliff, but into a wall.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that are, there's a lot of people that were really excited about his presidency, and there were a lot of people that were really upset. And I mentioned this, I'd call over to the States, a bunch of times. And there's varying data points I got from people that were just upset, and I saw more takedowns on LinkedIn. It just felt like everybody is more agitated, and everybody's fed up, and maybe they're fed up, to your point, with this level of volatility. And so I've been writing these messages, and the long story, the TLDR, is that a woman wrote me, because you're never sure if anybody's ever going to read these things. You know what I mean? You write these things, and these newsletters don't get like a high response rate, and the reply doesn't go to me anyway. So I don't know. But I got this long message from this woman in London saying, hey, I just want you to know I've been reading your messages, and it makes a big difference to me. And I remember being a member during COVID, and I'm a member now. And I just want you to know that this message is reaching somebody. And I've gotten a few of those over the last couple of weeks. And so
those matter, like whoever sends those out, because you're right, like newsletters are kind of this interesting thing where you send it, a lot of people read it, but it's the engagement is of a very different sort to social media. where you post and they comment right there and the comments build on each other. And once in a while, you get the most thoughtful email from somebody who's something that's connected with. When I wrote the founder mode one, that connected with a lot of people. I got these really emotional, deep messages, similar to when the election happened and I wrote about how we shouldn't be talking about this. And there were people that reached out and said, I have felt so targeted in my organization recently for my views. And this really helped me deal with this situation. It really moves you. It moves you in a way that very few other things do.
I just think, we've been talking about this privately, Asad, on the phone a lot last couple of days, and this relates, we've been talking about it in the context of marketing channels, and we can go there if we want to, but I think this is just true for all of us. Like the playbooks, the idea that there's a set of instructions that you can follow without giving it consideration, context, or thought, but just do these things, that is gone. That is gone. And the thing that volatility allows for is the expression of individuality. I think there's just this opportunity to lean into our organizations, and whatever makes our organizations the most us, this is an opportunity to let that shine and to not have it follow any specific playbook. It's not about this worked for Brex or this worked for Ramp or this worked for OpenAI, but what works for STA, what works for QuotaPath, what works for Pavilion. I'm feeling that every day, like every intuition I have, to the point of writing this thing, every intuition that's like more me, more imperfect, more flawed, but more real, I think is the differentiating factor in a world of AI.
I do think it has led to an increase in awareness and I think an actual use of some first principles based thinking. Whereas for a long time, it was just, these are the 10 things I did here, I'll do them here and it'll be fine. AJ, building on this point of communication, right now, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is the messaging at the end of the year, the kickoffs, the sales kickoffs that happened in early 2025 were very bullish, right? For reasons like you looked at the economy in that moment and you had reason to be bullish. And also when you have somebody like Trump come into power, you assume that's good for markets based on his positioning and his track record and how the Republicans think about things like taxation and regulation, all of this stuff. So there was a lot of communication inside organizations around, guys, we're going to be back to growth now. We need to be thoughtful and remember the lessons we've learned, but now we're past the worst. And now there has to be some new communication that happens internally. Every CEO, every exec is thinking about this today, yesterday, tomorrow. What do I say to my people now? What's the message? So what's the message? What should we be saying?
First off, this wouldn't be episode 100 if I didn't have internet issues. So I dropped off
for in character for you. It's
for
beautiful.
3 to 5 minutes, and I'm just shocked that I didn't come back online and Sam isn't making up.
No, we're professionals.
You
We're
took
professionals.
it in
You see me or not
stride
be here, we're completely indifferent
and had no bearing on this episode whatsoever. Just marched right on, and here I am. Actually, it was my internet, but also my computer shut down for 5 minutes right there. So.
Yeah, this is how we know you're a technology CEO.
Asad, actually,
exited. He sold a company for 220. An internet company, a technology company. That's why he does not know how to use
episode 1 million. When I live to 3,000 years old, episode 1 million, I will nail it for you, Sam, and I will get high broadband internet instead of the dial-up that I have. Asad, I don't think it's that surprising. Like we always have strong kickoffs, whether you're coming into 23, 24, 25, it's always going to be the vision and what's the company going to do. No one's coming in and saying like, oh, we're going to go down in revenue by 60% this year. But
they would say that, hey, this is a challenging time. We're going to focus on efficiency. It's going to be a dogfight.
Look, I appreciate a lot of things about what's going on right now. And just like here's what I say. If people tell you what they're going to do and then they meet those expectations, I don't get mad at those things. It just already met expectations. honestly, as far as the economy goes, Musk and Trump himself both said there's going to be a lot of people that are going to have a hard time at the beginning of this year. They said that. They said
So
it in
you were
plain
kind of
words.
prepared for this in a way.
Why? Why were you not prepared? Why were we not prepared?
Because this guy changes his mind every 2 seconds, so it's
But he's
really
always
hard.
done that. It's always been the case. That's always the
I'm not
case.
defending him. I'm not.
No, I know. I'm just
here defending him.
I am surprised that anyone out there. I mean,
You love Trump.
we know.
Get out of here. I'm triggered. Let's go back to ism.
Sam,
DEI.
this is about the time where I drop off because of internet, and then you guys keep saying, "Well, AJ, he's going to his rallies over there." I've made my thoughts known on the administration. I have not changed. I have not wavered. I am very secure in my thoughts and feelings over the last several years. Nothing changes now. I do actually think this is probably pretty good for just the general US, not the decision making, not how it's being communicated, but the reset. Stocks have been very overvalued for quite some time, regardless of where they are. I think my brother works for the government and may or may not have a job week to week. He's had some scary situations already that I won't go into detail. I have a lot of personal feelings about that. However, there's a lot of excess that's being spent in this world, and frankly, maybe it's needed a little bit, and we need to reset some things. But at what cost? I don't know. It's not my decision. I can only control what I can control. And so my messaging, Asad, because that's what you asked, hasn't changed, hasn't wavered. Expectations around what we're going to do, growth. Q1 is meeting those expectations in some ways and missing in some ways. And my messaging week to week to the company is like, here's the things we have to fix. Here's the top account.
Does this change your expectation of 2025? Like the plan you had at the end of last year, you think the same plan's achievable?
Yes.
How? Like if recession risk is now 50, 60%. So everybody has doubled their recession risk indicator, right? You look at Goldman Sachs, you look at JP Morgan, everybody has literally doubled their recession risk. And that was yesterday before they increased tariffs even further. So the likelihood of us falling into a recession is significant. How can you not think that that would be impacting growth and churn?
Is that impacting Cursor? Is that impacting OpenAI? Maybe.
Well, the point is this is new information as
this
of
is
the
new
last
information.
I don't think it's well understood.
We had that conversation in the CEO channel in Slack, and somebody asked, hey, is anybody getting impacted by tariff discussion in their deal making? And there was a few people that are like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have lost some deals, they said.
I talked to my CEO coach, Glenn, who has a bunch of CEOs, and some of them are both sides politically, and one is actually a Trump supporter and being impacted by the tariffs. Like, that's just the reality of the situation.
But that's what I'm saying. Like the game on the field has adjusted from what we all thought when we went through planning and forecasting and budgeting for the year. And as this new information has presented itself, it requires a reforecasting of what is possible, especially for companies that have to spend to grow, right? They have to burn some capital to achieve growth, and they want to do it in a sustainable way. So if the market is going to be taking a bath left, right, and center, it will even affect the OpenAIs of the world. Because remember,
100%. These companies burn tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions. Their access to capital is I would imagine.
Okay, let me actually reframe what I'm going to say. Rephrase what I would say. We do a yearly forecast like everyone, but we actually do a quarter-to-quarter financial plan approval. So 100%, the data that we have and what I'll see at the end of the quarter will impact how I forecast for Q2 and how I communicate to the company. So I'm not an idiot. So I guess that's fair point there. My point is that like none of this is super surprising. And yeah, it could change my forecast a little bit and change people and whatever hiring plans. But I think we just have to continue to live in a quarter-to-quarter world or month-to-month even. And we're in this wartime. We've been in this wartime for 3 years. So nothing's changed there. I mean, Asad, you've
That's
said this
probably one of the lasting impacts of going through this is starting to think in shorter timelines when you're thinking about spending money. Like
That's
this
why we're
quarterly
tired. That's why we're
cycle.
exhausted. Like, I'm not comparing this to the conflict, to the war in Ukraine and Russia. Just, I want to preface that. However, this mentality, this volatility, this up and down roller coaster is exhausting. It is tiring, but it is the path that we as CEOs, founders, executives, operators have chosen. And we like this, survival of the fittest is like very clearly what's happening right now. You just kind of have to continue to push forward.
I have this weird thing in me that I feel way more calm when things are volatile than I do when things are good. I get really weirded out when things are good. I was at my
How many times have you
sickest
felt
when
good in the last, like what's felt good in the last 3 years? Or have you been calm for the last 3 years?
He just had a huge January and February, I bet. So
yeah,
Are you
we've had
freaking
a
out?
great start to the year. And not as much like that. Like, so I was really sick. Like my mental stuff was really bad in 2020, 2021, even 2022. So when we were doing exceptionally well, I was at my sickest with the OCD stuff. And it was just going downhill and it got really scary. And as the market kind of fell apart, if I look at the next 2 years is when I got well with that. And so my improvement in my personal health happened as things were going worse and worse. So that's like a strange, like, it's not market related as much, but the correlation of those two things is a weird feeling. And then I think having grown up in a volatile place and having operated in volatility for so long, it becomes your steady state. And so when things become more calm and composed, like where at the end of last year and the start of this year, it was like good times, it was a little uncomfortable. It required some adjusting to for me. Whereas right now, it feels very like relaxed. Like I say, okay, I know what to do over here. Wartime CEO, I know how to play that role. Peacetime CEO, I've never really been a peacetime CEO. I don't count the 2021, 2022 periods as that. Like that was just, you just have to keep it on track and you're going to do well. Like it doesn't require a lot of science at that point. So it's just a weird feeling.
I mean, I come back to the reality, to the point of like secular themes. Although this is a cyclical theme, so, but the point is, Pavilion is needed more in times of volatility. So I think there's an opportunity to be executed against or to be prosecuted. That now, if I don't do that and we don't adjust and we don't adapt, then that's on us and on me. But it's hard for me to think that there's not a big opportunity for community in a moment like this.
Huge.
Sure.
As big as it gets opportunity.
Probably doesn't get bigger than a recession plus AI together. Like that's as like from a condition perspective, there's nothing that leads to more questions that need to be answered and skills that need to be developed and perspective that needs to be understood than in a period like this.
The challenge with Asad, the challenge with it, Sam, here is that yes, that's true, and you as the leader have to constantly be thinking about where you're meeting this community. Like, where can I find that demand side of it? Because it exists, it's there. But what are you bringing to the table that's going to help that part of the demand, and how big is that demand? So it's just a constant thinking about where am I going? Where am I headed with these specific pieces, right?
Yeah.
How does Sam, when you think about the outlook for 2025 and 2026, what's your outlook now that this new information has presented itself? And B, has doing 100 episodes of this thing, Top Line, evolved how you think about developing that outlook in any way?
Well, I was just thinking as we were talking, because, I think 2023 is going to be proved to be a much worse year than 2025. And we may go into a recession.
I hope that's true, by the way. I hope you're right.
I think that, I think, listen, I think to the extent that this is self-inflicted, it can be reversed. And I think Trump is highly, highly susceptible to being liked. And being liked by, he's very thin-skinned, I think. So Now, other people might say that he's a lame duck president. He doesn't care, but I think he cares. And I think he's particularly sensitive to the stock market. And I think that I think, and what they've also messaged is that this is a 1-2 punch. This is the first punch. The second punch is a massive tax cut that hopefully would free up and unleash capital. I think Freeberg on All In. We should talk about what insanity those people are blathering about these days.
I haven't listened to them in a few months.
It's just
it's amazing.
It's an amazing observation of how incentives can pollute. Like, you just can't trust what these
egos and incentives will give you an outcome.
They've made their bed about how this was going to be the greatest thing ever, and so no matter what happens, you find them defending it. And anyway, it's just wild. But my point is, I think that there was a third leg of the stool, but one of them is definitely tax cuts. And so I think that there's an opportunity to say, okay, yes, tariffs, but there's going to be massive tax cuts and
regulation.
And maybe deregulation, and maybe the business environment can become better through the summer and into the fall. But I don't know. I don't know. And I know that in 2023 we survived. And I know that in 2023 we made some stupid mistakes, and we're making smarter decisions now. And we are still, I feel, so all of that is to say, like, my whole posture has been good 25, better 26, great 27, heading into an amazing 28. I still think that that's realistic. And I frankly wish I had more cash on the sidelines to invest right now, because every time the market crashes, the people that invest, you can believe that it's got further to go down, but trying to time that. The reality is that if you believe in the economy at all stocks are cheaper, significantly cheaper today than they were last week. And the companies are still operating. And certainly if you have any point of view on crypto, the value of most crypto has been cut 30, 40% over the last month. So if you believed in it then, I don't know why you wouldn't believe in it now. Again, the point of investing is buy low, sell high. And the reason it's hard is exactly the reason that you're listening to this and you're not going to do what I'm telling you to do, which is that psychologically, we want to buy high and sell low. We want to get out at the bottom and get back in at the top. So if you can be greedy when others are fearful, I think this is an investment opportunity. I think this is an investment opportunity across demand gen too. Like I said, this is what I was talking about Asad with AJ. What's the connect rate? AJ will know this because AJ, as ChatGPT tells us, AJ's the numbers guy.
I'm the data guy. What Sam is referring to is I did deep research on us and Topline and our dynamic nature that the three of us hold on episode 100. And it said that I was the numbers guy. I'm also the wittiest and the smartest and the best looking of the three of us. That was ChatGPT.
This is true. It's a quiz.
It actually did say Sam is the wittiest and the moderator. I didn't send you Asad's. Asad's is like 4 pages long, by the way. So I'll drop it in. It's great. What was the question again, Sam?
What's the connect rate on a cold call
today?
Yeah.
Oh, like 1 in 100. It's really bad.
That's a connect rate. That's just to get the person to answer the phone.
Yeah. It used to be 1 in 11 back in like 2012. It's now 1 in like 100.
Okay, so this is my point, right? So everybody's on their back foot. Everybody's getting punched in the face, and everybody's continuing to run these banal, annoying email sequences. Even if they're written by AI, they think they've taken a massive leap forward by sending 10 times the number of emails, getting their server blacklisted, and now AI, writes something that still feels incredibly generic. Well, what's 100% connect rate? 100% connect rate is flying to a city, to a trade show, and shaking somebody's hand in person. What percent of that converts into an opportunity, I don't know. But I'm telling you that there are opportunities if you can take a step back from your reptile brain and from your fear and look at the landscape and say, what is an opportunity right now? While everybody's hunkering down, get on a plane and go meet your prospects and your customers and do it in places they convene, like trade shows and conferences. And if you do those things, you can generate demand in a time when other people are having trouble generating demand. And that is my point about thinking about what is interesting proprietary, unique, authentic about your go-to-market motion so that you can start perfecting it and driving it.
I think that is so interesting because there's another leg to that, which is that when there's volatility, people are looking for information that can help them think through what's happening, what could
Cut through
happen,
the noise.
where can this go, what can we do, what's
Agree.
working, what's not working. So there's a little bit more, I think, curiosity in the environment. And you're dealing with so much pressure that actually being around other people that are dealing with similar pressure can be quite calming, actually. Like, it was actually really helpful for the three of us to meet once a week and do this and be talking throughout the week during these really hard, volatile times, because we want the job of, I think, any exec, but especially a CEO, is a lonely job, right? Like, there are limited places you can go internally in an organization to have the most open conversations, share how you feel, all of that stuff. And so having peers, I think, helps a great deal. And in moments like this, you need it a lot more. And so I think if you look at, and this is why thinking about a system or an environment or an ecosystem and understanding what's going on within it, and then thinking through, well, how do I chart my path through this? I'm not just taking the list of 10 things to do because Bobby did them there, but actually saying in our world, how are we going to chart this path, I think is the way to do it. And you just need places to go to get those answers and get that perspective and also a shoulder to lean on.
I think your point, Asad, the one thing I would say, what have we learned? I think we're alluding to it, and now it's coming to me as a realization, which is true of any difficulty. When people isolate, this is not the time to isolate. This is not the time to pull back. This is not the time to cancel your Pavilion membership. And in fact, if you dial 1-800-Pavilion, you can use the code. No, I'm kidding. But seriously, do not isolate. Now's not the time to cancel your memberships to things. Now is not the time to say, okay, I'm going to cut off my connection to the outside world because I have to focus. Now is the time to be as connected to the outside world as you can in a healthy way.
The official marketing playbook for 2025 starts at CMO Summit. On April 17th, join 150 of the world's top marketing executives in Atlanta for a one-day event designed to redefine marketing's role in business growth. In a world of shrinking budgets, the CMOs who lead with strategy and innovation are the ones driving real results. This summit is where you'll gain the tools, insights, and connections to do just that. Hear from industry pioneers, engage in hands-on workshops, and surround yourself with marketing trailblazers who aren't just your peers, they're the minds who will inspire your next breakthrough. Visit joinpavilion.com/CMO Summit to secure your spot today.
That was my exact point that I made in episode 2 when I said that CROs and RevOps leaders and finance leaders were canceling subscriptions. And I felt like that was so short-sighted to do that, because you're just going to be reinvesting in those things in like 6 months and with a totally different person. And then you're a part of the volatility instead of riding through it. 100% agree. And Asad, going back to your point in just like today's news or last week's news or whatever the news is in terms of this just ever changing, like, okay, we're going to definitely hit a recession. I messaged you guys and a couple other folks that are in our cabal, and I was feeling really down that morning about it. I was just like feeling bummed. And I went and had 3 in-person meetings where we were. And that changed my outlook just from those conversations altogether. We're literally, the point you're making, Sam, was why my outlook is different. Plus the run yesterday. And sure, it might all go to hell in a handbasket tomorrow. But
had you not been running in 6 months?
No, treadmill.
Okay.
I hate treadmill running. I'd only do 2.5 miles. It sucks.
Treadmill is 1 mile on a treadmill is the equivalent of 10 miles outside for me.
It's the same
Yeah,
thing.
because it's so boring.
It's so boring.
So terrible.
The only thing worse than a treadmill, Citibank.
Sam's going to cause a Citibank recession by himself through this show.
Do you guys remember Jon Stewart used to have this thing against Arby's?
No, why? I mean,
so for like 10 years, every 5 to 10 episodes in, out of nowhere, he would turn to this other camera and then just crap on Arby's. And Sam reminds me of Jon Stewart every time he does this. It was
There's
always
a
out
lot
of
of Jon
nowhere.
Stewart and Sam.
It
I
was
could
just
see that.
targeted, like heavily.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, I see what you mean, AJ. I also think that in my role, a lot of people come and want a point of view on, well, how are you guys seeing this? What are you guys thinking? And I feel like it's important to always have a realistic but tilted towards an optimistic view of things, because that's the energy you're sharing with the world. But it is hard to have that sometimes, because you're a person and you're getting beaten down by all the things everybody else is getting beaten down with. And it really comes back to what we discussed at the start of the show, which is the only way to do this properly is to care for things that, for the early part of my career, I didn't think were all that important. I didn't think a lot of this was connected to sleep and diet and family life and all those things. And I think that's been one of the big lessons through doing this podcast with you guys as well, because you guys are much better at those things than I was when we started doing it. And that was one of the things I learned. I was like, okay, like these guys are, they think about these things a fair bit more, and you start implementing them. So there is this, having peers, having a community makes a huge difference, and you've been able to pick up the tips and tricks that help you orient yourself correctly as well. Sam, when you look back to these 100 episodes, how have you changed as a CEO during this time? Like, how would you distill it down? What's different about Sam today than Sam right around the SVB crisis, from the context of a CEO?
I think I channel my reactivity in more productive ways. I was a VP of sales. I mean, I've always felt like an entrepreneur is the honest truth, but for a long time I was an operator. And as an operator, I thought I was an execution person. And certainly, I built Pavilion as Revenue Collective basically on my own with Andrew Seam. So you can't say that I suck at execution, but nevertheless, I am one of those people. At this point, I have 50 different ideas every day, especially because I run and I exercise, and that's when my ideas come to me. And I used to be much more reactive about getting back and just telling somebody, you have to do this now. And now I am much better at saying, this is an idea, this is something to think about. Don't change the roadmap, but something to inform how we're working together. At the same time, I'm better at holding people accountable to specific goals and deadlines and saying, this is what I expect and you must deliver it. So I think, and I'm just calmer in general because I have a longer term perspective. I mean, if you look at my personal life from 2 years ago, I wrote this post and we talked about it. What are the tenets of optimism? And I wrote that there's 4 for now. There's a million, of course, but one of them is good sleep. The other is caffeine, great drug. The other is exercise. And then the 4th is really love. And, said love of a good partner. AJ has Ange, you've got Shelly, and I've got my partner, but it's not just about the love of a partner. It's really the love of kinship and community and camaraderie. And I think if you can have those things, then you can be oriented for the long term. And I guess the last thing I have to say for myself personally is that, so first of all, let's underscore your personal life, your personal fitness, your personal state connects to your company very directly because it impacts how you make decisions. And then the second thing I would say is that when you're living beyond your means and when you're living in an untenable situation, it's going to feel untenable. What's the difference between now and 2022? Even though my net worth was much larger in 2022 than it is today. Today, I live within my means. Today, my life is stable in a number of different dimensions that give me energy and give me contentment and peace. And back then, even though, again, I was much wealthier on paper, I was much more deficient when it came to mental stability. I don't even think I was particularly unhappy necessarily. I just think that life felt much, much more chaotic. And when you've got a stable, calm center, that enables a lot.
That last point is so huge. It's so big, because it's so easy to just overextend yourself, especially when you're in an environment where let's say your net worth is increasing year over year, your cash flow is also increasing year over year. Those two things aren't always connected for people, but let's say those two things are increasing, which it was for a long period of time for a lot of people. You start spending with next year in mind. Yeah, we'll get ahead. Like we'll put this on the card, get that credit line, and people won't. From the outside, you won't tell because you're like, this person's killing it in life, but the person overextends. And then when the market changes, the interest rate on that thing goes up, and the cash flow comes down, and the net worth also comes. It is so hard to deal with that mentally, and you just have to learn that there's a discipline with which you need to live your life, to not put yourself in a situation where you can't make calm, composed, strategic, thoughtful decisions because of the undue pressure you have put yourself into. And so that ends up making you make choppy decisions. It takes time away from you as well. You might have to look for liquidity faster than you had to if you were a little bit more thoughtful, right?
Yeah. By the way, your partner is Sherry, not Shelly. I'm sorry.
Sherry.
Thank you, AJ.
AJ, what about you? Over the last 102 weeks, 100 episodes, how have you seen yourself evolve as a CEO? Who between you has been CEO longest? Sam, how long have you been a CEO?
I mean, it depends what you define being CEO of Pavilion. I mean, I've been doing this. Next year will be the 10-year anniversary. I've been working on this full time since December 2018. So, however, that's 6.5 years.
I am full time since March of 2018. So, right around the same time. I mean, I think Sam's original point applies to me for sure, which is taking pauses, not as emotional, much more objective about things. I think that's helped calm me quite a bit. I have come to the conclusion that I'm just as passionate about QuotaPath and what we're doing than I've ever before. I'm really passionate about the management team, and I'm going to continue to do the three things that all great CEOs do: paint a great vision, recruit great people, and don't run out of cash. And those are the three things that I'm just going to use as my North Star. And at the end of the day, if something upsets me from a co-founder, from someone on my team, Angela, just take up my kids, most importantly, my kids, I'm just going to take a pause and not get as upset, not get as emotionally driven about those. I think if I think back to SVB, I remember being sick to my stomach for 3 days straight and not sleeping at all those nights at all. Literally like doomsday event. We're done. Game over. And it was a miserable, miserable feeling. I can't say that I won't go back there because I'm just a human being, and that's probably, I can't control my emotions that way. But I do think I have, the last 3 years have given me much more perspective on these challenging moments in time where I didn't get that at Trendkite. I had 7 years of up and to the right, triple, double, and then we didn't get to the third double. But we did it, and we did the thing, and I thought it was easy, and I was an idiot. I was dead wrong about that. It is the hardest thing I've ever done in my entire life. It's not, everyone just had a call today, and someone said like, oh my goodness, AJ, congrats on all of your success over your career and what you've done and all of the things. And I have not been able to handle success well because I just don't feel successful. So it's just one of those things that I'm just constantly driving towards of like, when's enough enough? I don't have a good answer for that.
I will say, thinking back on SVB, one of the things that struck me, it doesn't feel like this now, but maybe it should. Maybe the reporting will come out. But the SVB thing also felt so corrupt. I just remember, a CEO
Thiel.
that we know. Yeah, and certain CEOs being like, I wired $40 million out the morning of, I got it out. And then other people, I didn't get it out. They're not returning my calls.
I didn't get mine out.
It just was so gross.
It was infuriating.
Yeah. And it just felt like, they raised from the right people. It just felt so, one thing that COVID felt, the reason I love COVID was because everybody was at home. It affected everybody. The billionaires were at home wearing face masks or when they went outside. And so were we. And
across the world.
Yeah. And so when it's even, it's okay. When it's so unevenly distributed and you feel like if you just don't know the right handshake or the right person to call, then you're screwed and they're not, that was upsetting.
It's interesting because shared experiences across the world are very rare. Like, World War II was a big one. COVID was one. Big sports events seem to be like the more positive ones that are similar, just but not at that scale and that intensity. But the Olympics or the World Cup or something can have that. It's just really interesting when you talk to somebody in any other part of the world and they're kind of dealing with the same thing you're dealing with. It's really interesting.
Now I guess everybody's dealing with how much they hate the United States of America.
It's totally different. It's totally different.
Sam, actually, honest question. Have you felt being out in Barcelona and on the streets that people are asking or treating you differently?
No. I mean, honestly, my life in Barcelona is pretty insular. I don't, I go out to run and I go out to get my iced coffee and, but I'm not out there like talking politics with random people on the street. I think
sitting on the cafe smoking a cigarette talking about Trump. He's got some other things to do right now. I was talking to my mother a few days ago, and she's a very liberal person. Funny enough, she was a radio host when she was young in Pakistan, like a pretty popular one. Before she got married. So she really likes that we do a podcast. It makes her feel very connected to me. But she was actually very happy about this push towards reducing wars. And she doesn't tilt right naturally, but there's an appreciation for trying to get rid of wars that I've felt in people.
When you're saying the push to make Ukraine negotiate with Russia?
Yeah, just end it. Like, find a way to end this thing. Like, in that Trump thing, she actually found the Ukrainian guy as a little bit antagonistic unnecessarily, which I thought was interesting. I never thought that would be the case. I didn't think
it is. I have to say, why doesn't he dress nicer? He's acting.
This is a standard when people are in war. They
Churchill.
go in. Yeah, like everybody, but it's a very standard thing. When
Churchill was wearing like army fatigues everywhere.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
when you are at war, you wear the costume for war.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. Churchill, actually, really interestingly, not to give a history lesson here, but he was a fantastic wartime leader, and then after the war, he was like,
he got voted out right away.
Island. Yeah.
Bismarck was very similar as well. He was great at unifying Germany, and then not that great at running it. It's a common thing. And on that note, I think we're going to move in. Today, we're going to do, if you want to shout somebody out, you should. But I think it'll be really cool to hear, of all the interviews we've done, which one do you think about? What comes to mind as a memorable one and why? AJ, let's start with you. What was your favorite interview?
The one that Ryan Milligan likes to bring up that I appreciate the most because it felt like it was an interesting conversation. So we interviewed the co-CEO of Catalyst to Tango,
Edward.
Yeah, Edward, and the interview was fine, a good interview, and really interesting to understand how two companies come together. But afterwards, we went on this conversation around co-CEOs and what does co-CEO mean? And that was probably halfway through. Maybe that was like episode 50. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. And I remember that week after getting so many messages about, man, you really went off on co-CEOs not being a thing, didn't you? And I appreciated that because it felt like that was a really great debate and discussion that we had. And since Deep Research has tagged me as the greatest debater of the three of us, it literally says
this product
says it directly in it. It says AJ is not afraid of debate or discussion. And it brought up our outbound conversation in Deep Research. I'm not kidding.
How does it know all these things?
I don't know. It's scary. But I will say that was one of my favorite moments. And since you said we could give shout outs, I am going to give both of you a shout out. It has been a phenomenal last 2 years with you guys. I'm not going anywhere. Don't worry. This isn't my goodbye tour conversation right now. But it's been fantastic. And it's definitely been a highlight year after year. And Ange says that. My kids, when they listen to Top Line, they say that. My parents, my brother, all of our audience members dozens of them, hundreds of thousands, more thousands. And I really appreciate it. So thank you both for just being such an awesome rock, not just on Top Line, but outside of Top Line in our meetings and conversations. You guys are awesome.
Oh, thank you.
Sweet. Right back at you. It has been my favorite hour and a half of the week since we started doing it. Sam, I'll go and you have the best ending, so you end it for us. It was really, coming up, I really looked up to Lemkin and Roberge. I'd read their books, and they were in this Mount Rushmore of go-to-market in my mind. So it was very meaningful to get to hang out with them and jam with them. That meant that was quite a special moment, especially with Roberge. Like, I really looked up to Mount Roberge. I bought all his case studies that he did in his courses, and it was quite a moment. But the one that I think I keep going back to as my favorite conversation ended up being one that I didn't think it would be, that was Nick Mehta. Customer success is such an interesting thing these days. And he is the guy. He's the CS guy. And he was so willing to have such a proper conversation about it. Didn't have any topics that were off topic, wasn't feeling defensive, was almost excited to talk about what people would consider the hard topics for somebody in his position to talk about. And it was a wonderful conversation. And I think about that one a lot. And I gained a lot of respect for him at the end of that, because we asked him tough questions. And there are other people who we ask tough questions and they complain about me to other people. And so I really appreciate that he enjoyed it.
Who complained about you to other people?
There are people that complain here and there. I'll tell you later.
I mean, I was sitting here thinking, I was like, I know who the worst one was. There was two worst ones.
Ooh.
But I think I can't name them, but I think we would all agree.
Man, if you could just whisper it to me, I'll say it out loud.
And then I want to give a shout out to, obviously love both of you, but to Colin and Josh and the rest of the Pavilion team every week. Caesar, all these people.
Yeah, thank you, Caesar. Caesar's the unsung hero here.
Caesar. Colin.
So respect to all of them. Thank you for everything you guys do for this. So that's mine.
I like our regular crew. Could use a little bit more diversity, but I definitely like having Peter Walker come around regularly. I love having Roberge come around regularly. I would love it if I think Nick would come around regularly. We've become friends. But honestly, I have the most fun when it's just the three of us.
Yeah, 100%. Undoubtedly.
And I also just I'll give a shout out to not just Ryan Burke, who has long been, very active in our Slack channel, but Charlie Moss and all of the people, Dustin Bedouin. If I pronounced your last name wrong, Dustin, I'm sorry. But just all of the people that are sort of regulars and that are fun to engage with and fun to interact with in our Slack community. I think that's been a real highlight. And we've done 100 episodes, but I tend to agree with Asad. And this is my nudge. Josh, Colin, and Asad, get us your promotional plan. It's time for more people to hear this show. We're pretty good.
We're pretty good.
We've got microphones. The more people listen, the more we can invest in interesting research, proprietary research. We're nicer than some of the other 3-person podcasts, 4-person podcasts out there.
I'm nicer.
They've lost their minds. They've completely lost.
We have empathy for other human beings. So anyway, I just think this is the beginning of Top Line. It's one of the main ideas I have for demand generation for Pavilion is Top Line as a media business. I keep thinking about the Bloomberg Terminal and Bloomberg News and how can Top Line become a legitimate media property? Because honestly, there isn't. Who goes to Hacker News? Nobody, or I don't. I guess Reddit would be the thing that replaced Hacker News or replaced TechCrunch. Nobody goes to TechCrunch anymore. Like, where do you go to figure out what's happening in this ecosystem without where it's not like one guy, it's not like SaaStr, it's not like me, it's just like the media property that tells it like it is with a sense of humor about what's happening in the ecosystem. I think we have that opportunity, and I think we should I think we should promote the show and get more people to listen to it.
It's
time.
That's exciting.
And
What a
then
great
by
place to
episode
end up
200,
100.
by episode 200, I'll have my internet fixed. I promise.
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true, sadly. Thanks, everybody, for listening to 100 episodes of Top Line. And come back next week for episode 101, because we're not stopping.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
This episode was brought to you by AirCall, the business communications intelligence platform. Deliver a better experience for your customers and your teams at AirCall. That's AIRCALL.io. Save time, save money, and improve performance with a single communications platform.
Thanks for listening to Top Line. New episodes come out every Sunday. If you like what you heard today, subscribe so you never miss an episode, leave a 5-star review, and share it with your friends. Don't forget to join our Top Line Slack channel to connect with us and discuss the topics we cover with other listeners. Click the link in the show notes. Lastly, if you're interested in joining Pavilion, you can learn more about membership at joinpavilion.com/membership. Thanks again for listening.